Mind coach. No sweat. Yeah. Whew. Yeah. I just be talking that good. Still they gon' say that I'm bad. Yeah. We gon' go clean up the hood. I'm about to give them my last. Soon as they look at the presents, they wanna bring up my past. Yeah. We be exposing them liars. I'm about to put them on blast. I will not apologize for it. I will not apologize for it. I just be talking that good. Still they gon' say that I'm bad. Yeah, we gon' go clean up the hood. Yo. Mind coach. No sweat. Yeah. Whew. Yeah. I just be talking that good. Still they gon' say that I'm bad. Yeah. We gon' go clean up the hood. I'm about to give them my last. Soon as they look at the presents, they wanna bring up my past. Yeah. We be exposing them liars. I'm about to put them on blast. I will not apologize for it. I will not apologize for it. I just be talking that good. Still they gon' say that I'm bad. Yeah, we gon' go clean up the hood.
Peace, family. This is Elder Yara. Just coming to you real briefly. Just wanted to touch on some things that I've noticed just in my studies and just going around peeking in these crazy YouTube streets. Giving all praise to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to my ancestors that walk circumspectly before us. To show us how to walk this life, to walk out this Torah. But I just wanted to touch on some things briefly and do some testing on the channel for some changes I'm getting ready to make. But let's see what's going on here. Let me turn this down a little bit. And there's one thing that I have noticed. Is that oftentimes, because people hold a certain status simply based on longevity, that it seems to a lot of people that the things that they say, and oftentimes, the many times that they come up before the people, that oftentimes it seems to be that what they call scholarship should be taken seriously. Unfortunately, and it's true, But unfortunately, what happens in this community a lot of times is that people don't vet the information, or simply because they have a bias towards one side or the other, they simply don't engage in self-study or following up on the information that seemingly is being presented to them in an authenticated way. And what we have is a onslaught or avalanche of fringe and pseudo scholarship that pervades and inundates our minds, our hearing, because we watch what's going on. We have a genuine thirst for knowledge, right? And so oftentimes we leave ourselves to the devices of others to bring us scholarship in a way that is truthful to a degree. And what we have is a lot of people in a certain aspect of the community that will literally tell you and come before the people and say, listen, it doesn't matter if I'm right or if I'm wrong. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is if you simply like the way I presented the information, right? It's how much of a siren song I can sing to you that gets you to simply listen to the way the inflections of my voice, the way I raise my voice, the way seemingly how passionate it is about what I'm saying. Never mind whether the information that I'm actually bringing to you is factual. And so we have, the Bible speaks about people with itching ears, right? And the understanding of that is that people will forsake the truth and run after something that makes them feel good. Something that agrees with the anger, that justifies the anger that they may have, something that justifies the disappointment that they may have, something that agrees with their depression, with their anxiety, something that agrees with the complaining or the complaints that they have, or simply being overlooked in life. So they'll run to the person, right? They'll run to the Pied Pipers. The Pied Pipers in this community who are simply blowing a tune or a sound of information that sounds good. But underneath the surface, and trust me, the sad part about it is it's a very thin layer. You don't have to go dig very deep to see that a lot of the information that these guys are bringing to you is simply false. The biggest part about it is that they will lie. They will lie to you. They will lie in your face. And continue that lie and build on it. And why are they able to do that? Because no one simply says, hold on. Let me vet the information that you're presenting. Let me see if it's actually correct. They'll lie on the source information that they put before you, if they actually bring a source. They'll present a source, create their own narrative around it, and tell you that that's scholarship. But I do attest that there is a poor, there's a level of poor reading comprehension. Because either it's that, or you have people who are pathological liars. Pathological liars. And I want to bring that out. Just so you can get an understanding of what a pathological liar what a pathological liar is. Right? And this is from the Newport Institute, right? And it says a pathological liar not only lies frequently, but may feel a compulsion to do so. Pathological liars can't stop lying even when it causes psychological distress or puts them in danger and creates problems within a relationship, a work relationship, or other aspects of their daily life. That's from the Newport Institute. You have a lot of people in the so-called conscious community who are simply pathological liars. They know they're lying, but they can't help themselves. And so they'll spend hours. I don't think some of them study for hours, but they'll spend a few days, maybe 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, Google something on the internet, and it sounds good, and then they go ahead and create a lie. Right? And this is what we often see in this community. But listen, let me tell you exactly what I'm talking about in one instance here. And I'm going to show you the psychosis in a liar, and that they know that they're lying. Even when the information is presented in front of them, the truth is set before them, they'll continue with the lie because they have a compulsion to do so. They can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. And I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to show you guys something here. Fair use here. I'm going to show you something from Starnetta Studios. This is a copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, etc., and criticism. Right? This channel is not monetized. And no ads are being displayed or attached to this presentation. This is simply strictly for teaching purposes and instructional purposes only. Research and scholarship. So fair use is permitted. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna share my screen here. And hopefully I can do this real quickly. See, I can do this real quickly. Share my screen. I'm gonna do this. And I wanna go here. All right. Again, this is fair use. And let me do this real quick. Let me bring the value down on this because I want people to really hear it. And let's see. I'm going to get to some of this information. The Shaka almost bought out the other night. I think we're right here. You see right here. Hold on, let me see if the audio is playing here. Hold on, let me see if the audio is playing here. Hold on, let me see if the audio is playing here. Hold on, let me see if the audio is playing here. Let me check this real quick. Let me see. Let me go to general. Let me see if I can remember. Sister Nepal showed me how to do this once before. She walked me through this. Let me see if I can find that setting again. Where nope, that's not it. Let me see if I can get this to play in here. Yeah, just bear with me for one moment. Bear with me one moment. That's not it. Definitely want to show this. That's not it. Let me go back to audio. She told me to check something once before. Can't remember where it is. Let's see here. Let's see here. Small screen settings. audio. Let's see. We'll go to that. And let's see what happens. Let's see if we can hear it. See if we can hear it. I'll try to play it again. Let me see. We go to let me see if I can remember. See if I can Let me try and do it. Let me try and do it this way, family. Hold on one moment. I'm trying to.
What is that?
Hold on. Let's see if I can get it this way, because I just really need you guys to hear the audio. Just really need you guys to hear the audio. Let's see. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I wanted to get this out because I need to hear you guys hear this being said. I think this is it right here. I think this is it right here.
Hi, my name is Jerriana, and this is my Mary Grove retractable awning.
Let's skip that.
Here we go. Professional registration in the Higher Attestation Commission of Ukraine, approved by the resolution of the Presidium of the Higher Attestation Commission of Ukraine. Blah 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 blah. The journal "The World of the Orient" was first published in 1927 under the aegis of the All Ukrainian Scientific Association of Oriental Studies. So I'm introducing you guys to an academic journal. Don't say you never heard of it, and don't say I didn't document it, because I'm documenting it for you. In 1931, the publication was seized for more information, blah, blah, blah. The history of the journal during this period. 17 issues were published in 1993. After 62-year hiatus, the publication of the academic journal, The World of the Orient, was resumed.
Now, this is Shaka Amos, family, and I hope you guys can hear the audio. If you can really hear the audio pretty good, then I'm playing. Please put a one in the chat. Appreciate you, Skinny Man. And what he's attempting to do is to try to talk about how the Bible is plagiarized from ancient Kemet. This is what he's attempting to do. And so he goes into a study. He goes into a study dealing with the particular subject, whether or not things that we find in the Bible, specifically like the instructions of Amenemope, is it found in the book of Proverbs, right? And so he goes into this study, this Oriental Studies article from Ukrainian researchers in Crimea, I believe. And what he attempts to do is to read this publication, and then what he does is he begins to a logical fallacy by appealing to authority and saying, first, see, look at all these scholars who agree with this, right? But what do they actually say in this particular article? And what they actually say is this, right? Let's see here. What they actually begin to say is that what they developed is a hypothesis that somehow the instructions of Amenemope found its way into Israelite material culture and into the book of Proverbs. And some scribes, some Hebraic scribes, picked it up, right? And transmitted it into the book of Proverbs, where there's a huge problem with the hypothesis, because what they use for evidence is they claim this is their evidence, right? This is why this argument's failed. Their claim is their evidence that it's possible that the instructions of Amenemope was written in Aramaic and circulated, right? It was translated into Aramaic, into the Aramaic language, and circulated amongst the Israelites, right? And this became a part of their reading, giving no attestation to the instructions of Amenemope, but attested it to the Proverbs of King Solomon. Well, here's the problem with this whole article that Shaka almost tried to bring out and claim plagiarism on. There is no such rendering that has ever been found or exists today of the or the ancient times when of Amenemope, I believe who would have lived hundreds of years before they claim before King David and King Solomon would have existed. Their claim is that it was taken from Amenemope, and really they're only talking about a few verses, a few lines, not even verses, just a few lines in one verse actually. So they're claiming this, but the problem is, again, is that there's no translation in existence of an ancient Aramaic translation. So they're saying our evidence is that it's possible that the instructions of Amenemope was copied by a scribe in Aramaic, and it's possible that it was circulated around ancient Israel or in Jerusalem at the time. And this is how it entered into the Hebrew text. Well, they have no evidence that the instructions of Amenemope was ever written in Aramaic or ever circulated. This is their hypothesis, people. That's what they're claiming. That's what Shaka Amos is claiming is his smoking gun, is his evidence of plagiarism, right? Based on a ghost a translated text that never existed. They have no evidence of it. You can't show us a Aramaic text from I'll just say from the 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th century BCE, all the way up to the 3rd century BCE, all the way up to the 2nd century BCE, of the instructions of Menahope written in Aramaic. They're just saying, oh, it's possible. You have no evidence. You have no evidence of that. It's all hogwash. It's folly. It's folly. And so they attempt to use these articles, these periodicals, he kept saying peer reviewed, it's peer reviewed, it's peer reviewed. It doesn't matter if it's peer reviewed, but what are they saying in their review? What they're saying and what they're agreeing with is that it's a hypothesis. That's it. Shalom, Principal Yahweh. Shalom, KLD. This is the immaturity in the pseudo scholarship, in the fringe scholarship, and they will create an entire debate. They will create an entire argument based on this fringe scholarship. It makes absolutely no sense. And they do this quite often. They do this quite often. I want to try to play a little bit more of what he read. Fair use.
It became the main periodical of the AU Krymsky Institute of Oriental Studies of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. In all, nearly 100 issues were published from 1927 to the end of 2017. Periodicity is 4 issues per year. Approximate volume is 100 to 120 pages. Languages of publication are Ukrainian, Russian, and English. We know that Tazoriak does not read Ukrainian, and we know he does not read Russian. I don't even think he reads English, and he probably doesn't read Hebrew.
Always with the shots. Get to the information.
In Kemetic literature, because he's fascinated with that.
Hold on a second. Let me get to it again. Hold on. We're going to come right back with it. Let's pick it up where he's saying.
In that journal. Contributions may be submitted by scholars as well as by postgraduate students and applicants. Okay? Okay, so here we go. Okay? Now, who is the publishing company? Because your source gotta have weight. Give weight to the source. Vanderhook and Rupert, they're the ones that published this journal, this peer-reviewed journal. Right? They've been around since 1735. That means when black people was picking cotton on plantations in the south of the United States of America, this publishing company was publishing scientific literature.
Now here he goes again with the insults, insulting black people because we were picking cotton. We had no intelligence of thought. Like this guy is ridiculous.
Vanderhook and Rupert has been publishing scientific literature in Göttingen, making it one of the oldest independent publishers in the world. The scientific program for the subjects of theology and religion, history, classical studies, philosophy, and philology. See, this is some real scientific shit. Tazoriak don't know nothing about this. This is way above his pay grade, right? It's supplemented by practice-oriented literature for psychological counseling professions, church work.
All he's doing here, people, is making an appeal to authority. That's a logical fallacy. That's a very poor argument. A very poor argument to base anything on. It's just a simple appeal to authority. He's not properly He's not even talking about the actual what they're actually saying in context, in its proper context. He has to, then this is what I mean by a pathological liar, because he's already read what this article says. And he knows it gives no weight and no credence to what he wants to argue as an absolute fact, because the article never says that this is an absolute fact or this is the fact of the matter. So what he has to do is first now build an argument on an appeal to authority to give what he's about to read some credibility, because he knows it really has none based on the argument he's attempting to make. Let's continue. You have to be careful with these guys when they come on these platforms.
As well as early childhood and school education. Teachers will find high quality textbooks and teaching materials for Latin, Greek, religion, and ethics. Okay? What was the original Bible written in? Greek. Both the Old and New Testament.
That's another fallacy.
So you should be interested in this, Zoria. Steal it. He cycled through 5 times, right? And he used the Aramaic translation closely and sequentially. Or he used Amenemope, right? He used it. He used it closely and sequentially to form Proverbs. So there's no question, Zoria, of where that biblical literature came from. And so that's what I mean when I say, how can you quote biblical literature to us when our stuff is in the Bible?
But again,
how can you do that? Like, what kind of
pause? Now, y'all heard him say Aramaic, and the reason why he says that, because he already has read through this article, and what they have said is that their hypothesis is that there's possibly the instructions of Amenemope was written in Aramaic or translated in Aramaic somewhere, and that's how it got into the biblical narrative. But this Aramaic translation is a mystery. It doesn't exist. There is no copies to date. None has ever been found. No one's ever mentioned it. No one's ever documented an Aramaic translation of the instructions of Amenemope existing at this time anywhere in the ancient Near East and found its way into the biblical narrative in Proverbs. It's bad reading comprehension, people, or he's simply a pathological liar. And I'm gonna come back and do this over again because I don't like the audio. I'm gonna figure out how to play the video. But let me show you guys something else. Let me show you guys something else too. Let me show you guys something here. We're talking about this particular topic. Just really quickly. Let me show you guys something. Well, these guys will never tell you the truth. And this isn't information that I'm the only one who can find it. This is information that you don't even have to really dig that deep to find the actual truth of the matter. Watch this. And this is what you have to first do. And this is the argument that these guys don't really want to address. Right? It's right here. Amenemope. Here, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen so you guys can see this. so you guys can see this. Let me share my screen. Right. And let's deal with this. I'm not going to beleaguer the time, but I just wanted to bring this out to you guys. A comparative contextual thematic analysis, Amenemope versus Proverbs 23. And if you're not looking at it from this basis, you're failing with this argument, right? A comparative contextual analysis is a methodology for comparative research where contextual interrogation precedes any analysis of similarity and difference. It is the thematic process directed and designed to explore relationships of agency rather than institutional or structural frameworks. Thematic, right? And this is just for a reiteration for the intelligent audience that's tuning in. Appreciate those who are watching. The thematic analysis is a method of analyzing qualitative data that entails searching across a data set to identify, analyze, and report repeated patterns. Braun and Clark, 2006. It is a method for describing data, but it also involves interpretation and the processes of selecting codes and constructing themes, right? So let's deal with it. A claim that is made is that a portion, when dealing with Amenemope versus Proverbs 23, is that a portion of the biblical book of Proverbs is actually copied from an Egyptian source. Amenemope, according to Introduction to the Old Testament by George Forer, Bingden Press, 1968, page 321. As long as it's been recognized, the first subsidiary collection, right, Proverbs 22, 17, 23, and 11, is closely related to the Egyptian instructions of Amenemope, which probably dates between the 10th and 6th centuries BC, right? Now, most biblical scholars would agree that King David and King Solomon would have ruled or existed during the 10th century, right? BCE, 1000 BCE, circa 1000 BCE to 950 BCE. So the instructions of Amenemope, as most scholars agree that it was constructed, is the same time that most biblical scholars would agree that King David and Solomon would have actually lived. That's something to really think about there. But let's continue. The introductory poem, which is what they call it, Proverbs 22, 17 to 21, and the 10 themes discussed in 22, Proverbs 22 through chapters 23, verse 11, follow often word for word their Egyptian source. This is what they're saying. Even the division of this source into 30 chapters, where it says houses, right, or 30 chapters or 30 houses, seems to have been borrowed by the Israelite redacted for the entire collection. Where the RSV correctly reads 30 sayings for the Hebrew day before yesterday, or adjutants, right? But watch this. Now, Benjamin Shaw, Associate Professor of Old Testament at Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, has written a series of short blogs answering the accusations of his personal journal. As a rabbi, I'll change that right there. GPTS Rabbi, right? That's his personal journal. His analysis can be found in the following places. Let's go back here, right? The teachings of Amenemope, a brief introduction to the problem, right? And then he goes on to different things. Now, here's the biggest problem with this, right? Here's the biggest problem. And here's really where it sets right here. In this area right here, Amenemope 4, which is really where they base most of the smoking gun. This is what they call the smoking gun here, right? When they compare Amenemope versus Proverbs 23. And this is just a light overview. I'm going to come back more probably tomorrow, Lord's will, Yahweh's will, with a more in-depth on this. The excellent things, or 30. There's a big discussion, right, in debate. There's no consensus that when it talks about the instructions of Amenemope and the 30 chapters, or it says 30 houses or 30 things or 30 sayings, is it really saying that, Or is it really saying these are the excellent things that I'm saying? Not 30 in Proverbs. It's not saying 30 in Proverbs as it says 30 in the instructions of Menahope, but in the book of Proverbs is the understanding the transition really saying these are the excellent things, not 30 things, right? And we're going to get more in depth in this going over, and this is just my setup for the teaching, and go into the instructions of Menahope and show it what we're talking about here. Also, the 30 chapters is what I was just talking about. Professor Shaw takes a brief look at the question of whether Proverbs following Menahope is actually divided into 30 sections, as the paradigm suggests. And the answer to that question is no. So if it's being copied word for word, you should have 30 sections in Proverbs that parallel 30 sections in the instructions of Menahope, and that does not exist. Proverbs 22 to 23, all the way to 24, actually, is not written that way. It's not 30 chapters. It's only 2 chapters in Proverbs. So it's not 30 chapters as it is in the instructions of Menahope. It's not. And no one's even arguing whether or not these are summarizations of these 30 chapters of Menahope that you find in Proverbs 22 to 24. They're saying it's completely plagiarized. It's taken from Menahope and placed in Proverbs without giving any credit to Menahope, but giving all the credit to King Solomon. It just doesn't make any sense. And no one's been able to prove that, to even make this argument of plagiarism. It's crazy, right? Menahope, number 6, is another point, right? The literary dependence. Professor Shaw looks at the question, what constitutes literary dependence of one work upon another, in light of the question of the similarities between Menahope and Proverbs. So no one's arguing whether or not there are similarities, but I've had this debate before. Similarities does not mean the same. And in order for you to make an argument of plagiarism, there has to be something of the same, especially when you use the term copy, which is why Chris Harris failed miserably in the debate with Tazariot, because if you use copy is a mirror image. That means you have an original and you copy the original, and it should be a mirror. If it's not, then it's not a copy. Similarities do not constitute as the same or meaning the same. It's a poor argument, right? Let's go down a little bit further. Also, Professor Shaw sets forth some brief arguments that challenge the notion that Proverbs was copied from Menahope. It's just really no evidence to suggest it. Now, who started this complete argument? Where did this come up for? And here's the thing, where I always get these guys and they never answer this question. From the time that they say the instructions of Menahope was written, right? The 10th through the 6th, possibly 10th through 6th century BCE, up until the time, quote unquote, and I'll for the sake of an argument, up until the time you guys claim that the Hebrew Bible was written maybe 6th century BCE, right? If you guys put it that way, if you want to say that, or some of you guys say the Septuagint or whatever, however you want to say it, whenever the Bible was written, Proverbs came down to us. How come no one before this gentleman who I'm about to show you makes the argument or suggests, and King Solomon reached upon the sayings of Menahope? If in fact your claim, Shaka Amos, is that it was being circulated, if it was being circulated in an Aramaic text, if it was being the instructions of Menahope, does not anyone else see this plagiarism before you pseudo scholars lay your eyes on it? It doesn't make logical sense. No one in history ever makes this claim until we get to this gentleman right here. Amenemope versus Proverbs 23. Adolf Ehrman, the dean of all Egyptologists, who in 1924 published an extensive list of correspondence between the text of Amenemope and the biblical book of Proverbs, with the bulk of them concentrating in Proverbs 22 through 17 through 23 in verses 11. It was Ehrman who used Amenemope to amend a difficult reading in the text of Proverbs 22 to 20, where the Hebrew word shashal, which means 3 days ago, appeared to be a copyist error that could be meaningfully translated only with difficulty, right? So it is this guy here, Adolf Ehrman, right? This German Egyptologist in 1924 says, look, I'm looking at my Bible and I'm comparing the Bible, the book of Proverbs, to the instructions of Amenemope, and they seem to say the same things to me. But prior to him, no one in history ever makes the claim. So you mean no one had the intelligence or this insight or the foresight to say, hey, look, Israelites, Hebrews, we're reading your Proverbs that you attribute to your King Solomon, and he's reaching back to the instructions of Amenemope. How come no one makes that claim until we get to this German Egyptologist? It makes absolutely no sense. No Egyptian historian makes the claims. But I can show you and prove to you and show you where there are many attestations where the Greeks were stealing from the Jews, where the Greeks were stealing from the Egyptians. But no one makes this claim about Amenemope and King Solomon until 1924. Come on, people. Let's think about what's being said here and what's being presented by these veteran HOK scholars. So it's either poor reading comprehension or surface level scholarship. And they like to tout themselves as, oh, they're great researchers. No, I don't see the evidence of that. It says, Ehrman pointed out that the substituting the similar shell lotion 30 not only made good sense in context, but yielded the following close parallel between the two texts. So what he did was, in order to validate his position that the instructions of Amenemope was basically Proverbs 22 verses 22 to 24 based on one word that he found that he couldn't understand in the book of Proverbs that didn't make any sense to him. But in reading the instructions of Amenemope, he says, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I'll just insert that here. This is what he says. And so in Proverbs 22 and 20, have I not written for you 30 sayings of counsel and knowledge? It is this right here he's making his argument on. He's the first one to bring this comparison out. And he bases it on this one saying here. And look at what it says here in Amenemope chapter 30, line 539. Look to these 30 chapters and 30 sayings. They inform you, they educate, sayings of counsel and knowledge. But the argument now is that we know this probably wasn't the correct interpretation by this guy, that it doesn't say 30 sayings, but it actually says, for I have not written for you more, or basically more excellent sayings of counsel and knowledge. That's what it should be saying. Excellent sayings, and not 30 sayings. That's just one dagger to this whole argument, right? And so we have to understand that when we're dealing with these guys, that they're really not studying this work. Adolf Ehrman also argued that this correspondence demonstrated that the Hebrew text had been influenced by the Egyptian instead of the other way around. Since the Egyptian text of Menahope explicitly enumerates 30 chapters, whereas the Hebrew text of Proverbs does not. Come on, people. He's telling you it's not the same here. This is what he says. Whereas the Hebrew text of Proverbs does not have such clear-cut divisions. There's no 30 chapters there in Proverbs for him to compare that to when they're talking about the 30 chapters of Menahope in regards to the fact that that's what it's saying there. And would therefore be more likely to lose the original meaning during copying. So he says, it's a copyist error. It should read like the instructions of Menahope is saying. Chapter 30, line 539 in the instructions of Menahope. That's how Proverbs 22 should actually read. Since Ehrman's time, there has been a near consensus among scholars that there exists a literary connection between the two works, although the direction of influence remains contentious even today. What they're saying is that even today, they don't know which text influenced which. There's no consensus. That's what this is saying.
Mind codes. No sweat. Yeah. Whew. Yeah. I just be talking that good. Still they gon' say that I'm bad. Yeah. We gon' go clean up the hood. I'm about to give them my last. Soon as they look at the presents, they wanna bring up my past. Yeah. We be exposing them liars. I'm about to put them on blast. I will not apologize